You probably think you know the story of the Garden of Eden. Adam, Eve, a snake, an apple. Simple, right? But what if I told you that before Eve, there was another woman? A woman made from the same earth as Adam, his equal in every way, who refused to be silenced and was all but written out of history for it. This is the story of Lilith. Lilith is a figure wrapped in mystery, a name that echoes from the edges of ancient texts but is missing from the main events of the Bible. She's a character who has traveled through thousands of years, morphing from a terrifying night demon into a celebrated feminist icon. But who was she really? And why does her story of defiance and independence feel both ancient and incredibly relevant today? Today, we're pulling back the curtain on one of history's most fascinating and misunderstood figures. We'll track her origins from the dust of ancient Mesopotamia, find her one and only possible cameo in the Bible, uncover the medieval story that made her infamous, and explore why she has been reclaimed as a powerful symbol in our own time. This is a journey to find the woman who was left out of the story, and to ask why. Long before Eden was even a concept, Lilith's story starts in ancient Mesopotamia. Her name is likely tied to a class of ancient storm demons called the Lilu, with the female version being Lilitu. These weren't goddesses you'd pray to. They were feared wind spirits, linked with death, and the dangers that haunted mothers and babies in the dead of night. One of the earliest potential appearances of a Lilith-like figure is in a Sumerian prologue to the Epic of Gilgamesh, dating back to around 2000 BCE. In this story, a demoness makes her home inside a sacred tree. When the hero Gilgamesh shows up, he strikes a serpent living in the tree's roots, and the demoness, sometimes identified as Lilith, smashes her home and flees into the wilderness. It's important to note, though, that modern scholars debate whether this figure is truly Lilith, as the identification is based on a translation that is now widely disputed. Still, this early portrayal gives us key traits that would define her for centuries. Her connection to wild, untamed places, a chaotic force opposing civilized society, and a link to darkness. Some scholars also believe her character absorbed traits from other powerful Mesopotamian goddesses, like Lamashtu, a fearsome deity known for snatching newborns, and Ishtar, the formidable goddess of love, sex, and war. Lilith wasn't a wholly new invention of Jewish folklore. She was an import, a figure borrowed from surrounding mythologies who was already a complex character. She was a primal fear, given a name and a form. Given her deep roots in the ancient world, it's pretty surprising that Lilith makes only one highly debated appearance in the entire Bible. In the book of Isaiah, the prophet describes God's judgment on the nation of Edom, painting a picture of total ruin. The land will be abandoned by people and taken over by wild animals. It'll be a place for jackals and ostriches. And then, in verse 14 we read, "Wild cats shall meet with hyenas, goat demons shall call to each other. There too Lilith shall repose and find a place to rest." And that's it. One word, Lilith, in the original Hebrew. The line feels like a throwaway, as if the author expected everyone to know what a Lilith was. But for us, it just creates more questions. The ambiguity has led to all sorts of translations. The King James Version from 1611 translates Lilith as screech owl. trying to make it fit with the other animals in the passage. Other versions choose night monster, night hag, or lamia. Most modern scholars lean towards it meaning some kind of night creature or bird, not necessarily the specific mythological figure. This single cryptic verse is the entirety of her biblical resume. She's not a major character, not even a minor one. She's just listed among the desolate spirits that will inherit a wasteland, a symbol of chaos. This brief mention doesn't say anything about her being Adam's wife. For that story, we have to jump forward more than 1,000 years to a much later text. The story that truly defines Lilith today, the one where she is Adam's first wife, is not in the Bible. In fact, its most famous and influential version comes from a medieval Jewish text written between the 8th and 10th centuries, known as the Alphabet of Ben Sira. Many scholars even suggest the text was meant to be satirical, but its impact has been anything but a joke. It gave a powerful origin story that explained both her demonic reputation and the tradition of using amulets to protect newborn babies. According to the Alphabet of Ben Sira, God created a woman for Adam from the same earth he had used for Adam and named her Lilith. Because they were made from the same stuff, Lilith considered herself Adam's equal. This caused problems almost immediately. When it came time to be together, Adam insisted on being on top. Lilith shot back, "We are equal to each other inasmuch as we were both created from the earth." When Adam refused to compromise, Lilith realized she would never be treated as an equal. In a final act of defiance, she spoke the ineffable name of God, a name of immense power, and flew away, abandoning both Adam and the Garden of Eden. Adam, alone again, complained to God, who sent 3 angels, Sanvi, Sansanvi, and Samanjaloth, to bring her back. They found her by the Red Sea and delivered an ultimatum: return, or 100 of her children would die every day. Even facing this horrifying fate, Lilith refused to go back to a life of submission. She declared that she was created to cause sickness in infants. But she did make one promise: if she ever saw an amulet with the names or images of those 3 angels, she would leave the baby alone. She accepted the daily death of her demonic children as the price for her freedom. It's from this dramatic story that the tradition of making protective amulets for children arose, a practice meant to ward off the vengeful, heartbroken first woman. After her dramatic exit from Eden, Lilith's story took an even darker turn in Jewish mysticism, especially in the Kabbalah texts of the Middle Ages. She was no longer just a rebellious wife, she was elevated to the queen of demons. In these mystical writings, she becomes the partner of Samael, an archangel often identified with Satan. Together, they were said to rule the other side, a realm of darkness and impurity. Her sexuality, once the basis of her claim for equality, was now twisted into something evil. She was recast as the original succubus, a night demon who seduces men in their sleep to create more demonic children. The Talmud even warns men not to sleep alone in a house, lest they be seized by Lilith. She came to represent a dangerous, untamed sexuality that operated outside the control of men. Her independence became the very proof of her wickedness. Her role as a threat to children also grew. Having lost her own children, she was seen as a vengeful spirit who preys on the babies of others, becoming a supernatural explanation for the unbearable tragedy of infant mortality. For centuries, amulets and prayers invoking the 3 angels were a common defense for pregnant women and newborns. Through this evolution, Lilith was fully demonized. Her story became the ultimate cautionary tale. A woman who demands equality isn't just disobedient, she's a monster, a threat to men, children, and the entire social order. She was everything a proper woman was not supposed to be: independent, sexually autonomous, and defiant to the end. For centuries, Lilith was a creature of darkness, a demon, a seductress, a baby killer. But in the 20th century, something incredible happened. Her story was flipped on its head. The very things that got her cast out and demonized, her demand for equality, her refusal to submit, her fierce independence, became the reasons a new generation celebrated her. Starting in the 1970s with the rise of second-wave feminism, writers and thinkers began to reclaim Lilith's story. They looked past the monstrous caricature and saw a woman punished for daring to be an equal. In 1972, theologian Judith Plaskow wrote a famous retelling called The Coming of Lilith, which reimagined the story from a feminist perspective, focusing on self-reliance and sisterhood. In this new version, Lilith wasn't a demon, she was a hero. The Jewish feminist magazine Lilith, founded in 1976, was named for her, its editors inspired by her fight for equality. Then there was the hugely popular women's music festival of the 1990s, Lilith Fair, which cemented her status as a mainstream cultural icon. In this modern light, Lilith is the voice that won't be silenced, the woman who walks away from a bad situation rather than shrink herself to fit in. She represents female autonomy, sexual freedom, and the courage to write your own destiny. Her story has transformed from a warning into an anthem. She's no longer a footnote in Adam's story. She is the hero of her own. This reclaiming makes us ask a crucial question. Was Lilith really a demon, or was she just a strong woman vilified by a patriarchal history that feared her power? Her modern rebirth suggests that the stories we tell often say more about us than they do about their subjects. So, from a shrieking wind demon to a feminist icon, Lilith has had a remarkable journey. She's a character who has been constantly reshaped by the cultures telling her story, reflecting their deepest fears and now their highest hopes. Why isn't she really in the Bible? Because her most famous story, as Adam's first wife, was invented over 1,000 years later, likely to explain ancient folklore and reinforce social rules. She was written out of the main narrative because she stood for everything the established order wanted to control: female autonomy, radical equality, and a challenge to authority. But what makes Lilith so timeless is that she is the ultimate rebel, the one who chooses exile over submission. She is the shadow of Eve, a reminder of a different path, one of unwavering self-worth. Whether you see her as a demon of the night or a beacon of freedom, her story forces us to question the narratives we've been given and to think about who gets to write history, and more importantly, who gets written out of it. If you found this trip into the shadows of history interesting, be sure to subscribe for more forgotten stories and mysterious figures. And drop a comment below. Who is Lilith to you?